The effective absence of truly great teams is a shadow feature of the Champions League in the last 5 years. This is not customary to say, but since 2018, when Zinedine Zidane and Cristiano Ronaldo left Real Madrid almost simultaneously, all four next laureates of the competition, as good as they were, didn't display the football of immense quality. Moreover, it was almost impossible to forecast their eventual success only a few months before it actually happened, relying on simple logic. Liverpool, after 5 group stage games in 2018, were on the ropes with 3 defeats. Then both Bayern and Chelsea have been in deep crisis and were forced to make a managerial change which later turned into an absolute masterstroke. As for the last year's Real Madrid, the side of Carlo Ancelotti was free of such upheavals, but during the memorable playoff run it has been written off so many times and by so many people that this fact, wittingly or unwittingly, is also characterizing its level of play. As for this edition, it promises to be the same in this regard. Yes, Manchester City are again a clear-cut favourites according to bookmakers, but as usual, this fact mainly reflects the specifics of the appropriate industry, which is a predominantly British one, and only after that, the sheer strength of Josep Guardiola's outfit, which is currently on a slide. By the way, it's pretty symbolical that the teams that are confidently leading into most prestigious national leagues are out of the contention in the Champions League. Barcelona haven't been able to pass the group stage, whilst Arsenal simply didn't manage to qualify to it. Amid this strange picture, I would dare to say that there are, as usual, 6-7 clubs that are capable to win the Champions League this year, and 14, this is some kind of a record indeed, of those that have a real potential to reach the semi-final. Having said that, even those two teams that on paper looks weaker than the rest, Club Brugge and AC Milan, with its lack of quality players and current incredibly poor form, are capable to reach the quarter-final stage if we recall that their opponents, Benfica and Tottenham respectively, lost the momentum after the break. As for the others, they all are pretty much competitive and comparable, and I am sure that we will witness a plenty of exciting and dramatic matches with a thoroughly unpredictable outcome. Properly speaking, this is a flip side of the absence of those who seems invincible and invulnerable. Personally, I would like to single out one intrigue, the battle between those teams that prefer a combination of football and those ones who bet on fast pace. There are at least 3 ties which fit this definition, perhaps even 4, but the Manchester City versus Red Bull Leipzig confrontation probably won't be a matter of tempo, given that the citizens, in addition to their superb passing, are one of the most agile teams on the continent. On the contrary, the 3 following showdowns would be surely decided by the pace of game, because what favors one team also destroys the plans of the other one. The upcoming PSG versus Bayern clash is a prime example of it. If football would have been all about speed, the standoff would be one of the most predictable, because in terms of velocity and mobility, these teams are poles apart. There are even almost indifferent galaxies. As you may see, the German giants are faster about dozen kilometers per contest, which is eternity in the modern game. But actually, football is much wider than that, and PSG can brag of the superior individual skills, having at their disposal the likes of Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi and Neymar. At the same time, in order to exploit this asset to the fullest, the Parisians must control the tempo of the game because Bayern are absolutely lethal on fast break. No wonder that the head coach of the French club, Christophe Galtier, who in the first half of the season was a firm disciple of 3-4-3 formation, recently switched to a hybrid 4-4-2 with effectively 4 central midfielders. Indeed, it's been partly caused by the simple fact that after the World Cup, the magnificent trio Mbappe, Messi, Neymar scarcely played together due to injuries and fatigue. But there is another reason of such drastic change of approach, the deeper one. Galtier, who earlier used the alignment with 3 central defenders, trying to accommodate the veteran Sergio Ramos, who at the age of 36, he will turn 37 quite soon, is naturally lacking pace and explosiveness, suddenly realized that the scheme with just one legitimate holding midfielder against Bayern, the most devastating team in transitional phase in today's football, will be similar to suicide. The only way to prevent the German club from its trademark supersonic offense is to barricade the middle of the field, saturating this vital zone with as many players as possible. Otherwise, when Bayern's attack is going at full pelt, it's probably too late to react, however much stoppers you have, 3, 4 or even 5. Keeping in mind that, Galtier, after a series of bad results, will do all in his power to make pace under control, while hoping on the individual brilliance of the famous trio. That's why Mbappe is so eager to return as quickly as possible, and it seems that he will win race against time. The combination of these two factors, slowing down the tempo and clinical accuracy of the stars in the goal-scoring situations, will allow PSG to go through, but obviously it is much easier to formulate than done. As for his counterpart Julian Nagelsmann, he recently was healing mainly psychological wounds of Bayern players that have failed as a unit at the World Cup, being part of the German national team. In the meantime, the Bundesliga champions certainly weren't short of personal issues, losing through devastating injuries one after another Sadio Mane, Lucas Hernandez and Manuel Neuer. But the managers of Bayern proved its class and savvy once again, promptly finding a proper replacement in the form of Jan Sommer, who has been purchased from Borussia Mönchengladbach, and João Cancelo, who has been taken on loan from Manchester City. Meanwhile, the informed Eric Maxime Choupo-Moting successfully took Mane's place in attack, so all these problems were reliably solved. The mental block, which definitely appeared in the heads of some players after the fiasco in Qatar, is a more complicated thing due to its intangibility, and Nagelsmann, without any doubt, spent hours and hours trying to rekindle confidence and appetite to football in Joshua Kimmich, Jamal Musiala, Serge Gnabry, Alphonso Davies, and some others who lost it after the painful defeats. The upcoming match against PSG will show whether he succeeded or not, but as of now, the main task of the German is to ensure that his side will play in the French capital incisively, bravely, and in fast pace. The latter is an obligatory condition, because exactly under the circumstances, Bayern, the team that excels in the situation of up-tempo, could damage their position the most. On the other hand, this is the most dependable way, however paradoxical that may sound, to neutralize Messi, who for a long time has an allergy on supersonic football and notably was so much brilliant in Qatar, in no small part thanks to the fact that at the World Cup, where the speed of play was on average 10-12 kilometers per match slower, the football of this type was simply absent. Eintracht Frankfurt vs Napoli is another tie, the outcome of which should be dictated predominantly by the tempo. Actually, it's worth seeing that the Italian club is rated as a hot and heavy favorite here to such an extent. Personally, I very much like the chances of the German outfit. Make no mistake about it, the hefty number of points garnered by Napoli in Serie A and more than a convincing leadership in the league as a consequence of it are impressive, but Oliver Glasner's side, with its Europa League title and the current sixth place in the ultra-competitive Bundesliga, isn't a slouch either. On top of that, there are all sorts of reasons to believe that in the form of Napoli, which prefer to control the ball literally for minutes, Eintracht, the team that adores attacking open spaces and scores the lion's share of its goals through fast breaks, can find a relatively, I underline, relatively comfortable adversary in terms of style of play. One pretty curious fact, after the Champions League group stage, the German club has been placed 26th among those who possess the ball the most, leaving behind itself only the hopeless underdogs or those who haven't been able to go further in the tournament. But ironically enough, those laughable at first sight 45% of possession could be the big strength of Eintracht in their battle with Napoli, providing that Glasner's outfit will score first or would be in front on aggregate. Having said that, the Italian club should control the ball much more even if the score will be even, simply by virtue of its style of play. In all these scenarios, the side from Frankfurt will get a hectare of room to operate and at the same time won't be feeling itself deprived or disadvantaged without the ball. The truth is that this side loves to attack strictly vertically. Add to it the fact that Napoli, despite its fabulous record, lost this term twice in regulation, and both these defeats came at the hands, or rather at the legs, of Liverpool and Inter, the teams that play in a similar fashion to Eintracht and in their current mode are hardly any stronger than the German club. Add and decide to yourself if the Neapolitans are the clear favorite of this tie or not. And last but not the least, what's confusing me is the figure of Luciano Spalletti, one of the most controversial persons in the European football presently. Don't get me wrong, he is a decent coach with a good assortment of abilities, who can swiftly install an eye-pleasing mild combination of football even if the personnel is relatively new to him. We have witnessed it on the example of Napoli recently. Moreover, I would dare to say that Spalletti's knowledge and taste to the game are quite in line with the level of the best in his profession. For instance, in those aspects, he is very much comparable to Ancelotti. However, Luciano, in his prolonged managerial career, won not so many trophies and achieved only pretty modest results in the Champions League. Why? Well, he is obviously a specific character, a man who usually is content with an initial success, even if it is a small one, and isn't trying hard enough in order to expand it. In addition to it, there is a suspicion that Luciano is simply lacking energy and focus to be a winning manager on longer runs. The Italian's inability to sustain a high level of efforts is well chronicled. We sequentially saw it during his work at Zenit, AS Roma, his second stint in this club, and Inter. We can also recall that in the previous season, Napoli hit the ground running in Serie A, and after that were desperately struggling, fighting just for the place in the top four. Usually it looks this way. Spalletti's side is winning 6-7 times in a row, or even more, and then abruptly and completely losing its way, as if it stumbled upon an invisible barrier. In this regard, the erratic Luciano is very similar to his more prominent compatriot Roberto Mancini, with one notable difference. Whilst Mancini is a banal, lazy, and arrogant person, his fellow countryman is seemingly lacking focus and intensity at first place. Actually, looking at him, one can understand how difficult and at times even convict is the job of football manager. It's really tough to work at 10 tenths all the time, and Spalletti in many occasions has been the victim of his inability to accomplish it. His employers, though, suffered from it perhaps even more severely by signing him on a long-term deal when things were going well and future looked bright and cloudless. Zenit and Inter both paid a heavy price for it in the past, offering Luciano lucrative contracts for several seasons in advance in those situations, but then were forced to axe him when the form and results of the team deteriorated in a big way. The truth is that Spalletti is capable to do an excellent coaching job, but only on short or relatively short stints, and after that he used to lose control under his team. Knowing it full well, the owner of Napoli, Aurelio De Laurentiis, one of the most cunning people in the modern football, is not in a hurry at all to extend Luciano's contract, although it runs out in June, and as the string of latest results in Serie A proved, this tactic is smart and efficient. At the same time, it's dubious whether Spalletti will retain enough sharpness and focus on the Champions League, keeping in mind that he is seldom successful in two major competitions during one campaign. His motivation is also in question, given that the coveted Serie A title, the first one since 1990, means so much both for De Laurentiis and the fans. In this context, it's obvious that the fate of the future Luciano's contract with Napoli will be decided right up to length and concrete figures in this tournament and not in the Champions League. Having weighed all, I decided to bet on Eintracht in this tie, even if I am definitely in the minority here. The last one of three allocated pairs, Liverpool versus Real Madrid, seems to be also transparent and easy to predict, considering the dreadful season of the Reds. On the example of Jurgen Klopp's side, one can see that fast football is a double-edged sword. When everything is going smooth, it's a deadly weapon, especially in the legs of the team of such magnitude. But when something, even if it is a small detail, went wrong, this weapon is turning in the opposite way. Klopp, with his traditional over-reliance on a narrow group of players, experienced it himself several times over his glittering career, but this crisis is certainly one of the deepest among those he faced, in addition to fatigue, which is perfectly understandable. After the super busy previous campaign, he lost basically the whole midfield, the key line for him. Jordan Henderson showed his age. Fabinho isn't fresh either after all these grueling seasons. Thiago Alcantara is injury prone. As for the others, including the ubiquitous veteran James Milner, they are capable of helping for sure, but not by much and not in a guaranteed mode. Moreover, after Mane has been sold to Bayern and Diego Jota got his nasty injury, Klopp was left without two footballers who with their diligence and work rate could visibly add some quality in this zone, even being located in the attacking trio. As a result, the team palpably lost its trademark resilience and intensity, and amid the fierce competition in the Premier League, the arena of the most dynamic football along with Bundesliga, those shortcomings proved to be fatal. It would be no exaggeration to say that for the Reds, the marathon distance of the season turned into 7 circles of hell, taking into account that Real Madrid have been the most dangerous opponent for Liverpool even in the latter's heydays. The outcome of this battle seems to be a foregone conclusion, but it's not as simple. First of all, Klopp's side is still more than capable to perform in the brilliant way in two particular games. Its problems manifest themselves in full on the long distance. As for this confrontation, the hosts definitely will be invigorated and motivated to the brim. The full Anfield is the other Liverpool's trump card, and even a fresh one if we recall that in recent history Klopp's team has been defeated by Real Madrid twice in the Champions League finals on neutral turf, and in 2021 was forced to play in the quarter-final in an empty stadium. Plus, there is another factor in the form of the Spanish giants' incredibly tight schedule. Since the beginning of 2023, the well-traveled side of Ancelotti had basically no respite, playing almost in the rhythm of NBA or NHL. Under these circumstances, it would be much tougher than usual for Real Madrid to showcase the poise and nifty, almost impeccable passing, the qualities that made it so fearsome opponent for the Reds. Moreover, since last meeting in Paris, the Champions League winners lost two key figures in the shape of Casemiro, who moved to Manchester United, and injured Ferland Mendy, despite the fact that Aurelien Tchouameni more than adequately replaced the Brazilian in the crucial zone. Real, with the South American's absence, definitely lost in crispness of passing, and for Liverpool, the team that thrives on opponents' turnovers, it's a good sign. Just like the disappearance of Mendy, the most dependable defender of his outfit, Eduardo Camavinga, who took his place in the late January and February, largely succeeded in that task, but along with that showed some tactical frailties, especially in the transitional phase, which remains the strong point of the Reds. In this sense, I would suggest that Ancelotti will use another player on the left-back position at Anfield, most likely Nacho, who is more reliable and astute tactically, in order to reduce the risk, and this should be done because there is little doubt that Liverpool will put all the efforts in order to win, and win big at home, being mindful of the fact that this tie is not only a matter of pace. The truth is that pace in this pair will be very much depend on the venue. Simply put, it would be almost automatically fast at the Anfield and much slower at the Santiago Bernabeu. In other words, to put it even simpler, if Liverpool won't get an advantageous result playing at home, it would mean the final curtain for them. The more interesting and pulsating it will be the first leg.